Park Jinho stood at his post near the main entrance of the grand ceremonial hall. His black uniform marked him as part of the Terran Embassy security team. The space station rotated slowly around the distant planet below, creating artificial gravity that felt almost like Earth. Through the massive viewing windows, he could see ships from dozens of different worlds docked at the station's ports. The Galactic Trade Summit brought together representatives from across known space. Today marked the opening ceremony, and the hall buzzed with activity. Aliens of every shape and size filled the room. Some walked on two legs like humans, others floated in environmental suits, and a few moved on multiple limbs across the polished floor. Jinho had served in the Korean military for 8 years before joining the embassy security force. At 32, he had seen enough combat to stay alert even during peaceful events. His eyes constantly scanned the crowd, looking for anything unusual. The ceremony was about to begin. Ambassador Lee Dongwoo from Earth sat in the human delegation section, wearing his formal diplomatic robes. Jinho felt proud to represent humanity at such an important gathering. Only 50 years had passed since first contact with alien civilizations, and humans still worked hard to prove themselves worthy partners in galactic affairs. A hush fell over the crowd as the main guests entered. Jinho straightened his posture as Queen Veritai of the Noxari Empire walked into the hall. She stood 7 feet tall, her scales shimmering green and gold under the lights. Her amber eyes swept across the room with regal confidence. The Nox were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors and brilliant engineers. Their empire controlled dozens of star systems. The queen wore flowing robes that seemed to change color as she moved. A crown of crystal adorned her elongated head, and ceremonial armor covered her shoulders and arms. Her entourage followed behind her, including several guards in traditional Noxari battle gear. Jinho had studied the files on all major attendees. Queen Veritai ruled one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy, but she also pushed for progressive reforms. Many of her own people opposed her efforts to work more closely with other species. Intelligence reports suggested that rebel groups called the Children of the Void wanted to remove her from power. The queen took her place at the head table on the raised platform. Other major leaders sat nearby, including the Trade Federation president and the hegemony chancellor. Jinho positioned himself where he could watch both the crowd and the platform. The opening speeches began. Each leader spoke about cooperation and mutual benefit through trade. Jinho listened with half his attention while keeping watch for threats. His training had taught him that ceremonies like this made perfect targets for those who wanted to make a statement. 20 minutes into the ceremony, Jinho noticed something wrong. A section of decorative panels high on the wall seemed different. The light reflected strangely off one area, as if something metallic was hidden behind the carved designs. He focused his attention on that spot while continuing to appear relaxed. Tiny movement caught his eye. The panel shifted slightly, and Jinho saw the brief glint of a weapon barrel. His heart rate increased, but he forced himself to remain calm. Moving too quickly might alert the attackers and ruin any chance of stopping them. Jinho began moving slowly along the wall, staying close to the crowd. He needed to get a better angle to see exactly what was happening. As he moved, he spotted another suspicious panel on the opposite side of the room. This was a coordinated attack with multiple shooters. The Trade Federation president was finishing his speech when Jinho saw the panels beginning to open wider. He had seconds to act. The weapons were aimed directly at Queen Veritai, who sat unaware of the danger above her. Jin-Ho broke into a run toward the platform. He could not reach the shooters in time, but he could reach the queen. His shouts of warning were lost in the applause as the president concluded his remarks. A display case near the platform held ceremonial items from various cultures. Jinho grabbed a large shield made of polished metal and alien alloys. The artifact was heavier than he expected, but his adrenaline gave him strength. The first energy blast fired from the hidden position struck the empty air where Queen Veritai had been sitting a moment before. Jinho had reached her just in time, throwing himself between the queen and the shooters while raising the shield above both of them. 3 more plasma bolts struck the shield in rapid succession. The energy burned through Jinho's uniform and seared his arms and shoulders. The pain was incredible, but he held his position. The shield absorbed most of the energy, but some leaked through, burning his skin. Queen Veritai reacted with warrior instincts. She rolled away from the table and drew a weapon from beneath her robes. Her guards were already moving, having spotted the source of the attack. Security forces from multiple species converged on the hidden positions. Jinho collapsed. As the attack stopped, his arms were badly burned, and his uniform was smoking. The ceremonial shield had probably saved both their lives, but the cost had been high. He could smell his own burned flesh and fought to stay conscious. The queen knelt beside him as her guards secured the area. Her amber eyes showed concern and something else that Jinho could not identify. She spoke to him in accented English. "Human, why did you risk yourself for me? We barely know each other." Jinho struggled to speak through the pain. It was the right thing to do. Someone was trying to hurt you. Queen Veritai placed her clawed hands gently on his burned arms. Her touch was surprisingly gentle for someone with such dangerous-looking talents. She spoke words in her own language, and Ginho felt a cooling sensation spread through his injuries. "You have shown great courage," she said. "I will not forget this debt." Medical teams arrived and began treating Jinho's wounds. As they lifted him onto a stretcher, he saw the security forces bringing down 3 attackers from the hidden positions. The aliens wore masks and dark clothing, but their weapons were clearly designed to kill. Ambassador Li Dongwu appeared at Ginho's side. As the medical team prepared to take him away, the older man looked shaken by the attack. "You did well, Jinho," the ambassador said quietly. "You may have prevented a war today." As they carried him toward the medical bay, Jinho caught sight of Queen Veritai watching him go. She stood tall and proud despite the attempt on her life, but her amber eyes followed him until he disappeared around the corner. The assassination attempt had failed, but Jinho suspected this was only the beginning. Someone wanted the queen dead badly enough to attack her at a major diplomatic gathering. That kind of desperation usually meant bigger plans were in motion. In the medical bay, as doctors worked on his burns, Jinho wondered what would happen. Next, he had acted on instinct to save a life, but that split-second decision would change everything. Jinho woke up in the medical bay 3 days after the attack. His arms were wrapped in strange blue bandages that felt cool against his skin. The burns still hurt, but not as badly as he expected. A doctor with 4 arms and silver skin was checking readings on a machine next to his bed. "You are healing well," the doctor said in broken English. "Noxari medicine very good for burns." Jinho tried to sit up but felt dizzy. The doctor gently pushed him back down. "Rest more. Queen visits soon." Sure enough, Queen Veritai entered the medical bay an hour later. She moved quietly despite her large size, and her scales had shifted to darker shades of green. Jinho had learned this meant she was being serious or thoughtful. "How do you feel, Park Jinho?" she asked, pulling a chair close to his bed. "Better than I should, thanks to your medicine," he replied. "Did they catch all the attackers?" The Queen's amber eyes narrowed. "Yes, but they killed themselves before we could question them. They were very dedicated to their cause." She sat down and studied his face carefully. "I have been thinking about what you did. In Noxari culture, saving someone's life creates a bond between warrior and protected. But you are not Noxari." Jinho shifted uncomfortably. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Queen Veritai said firmly. "Most beings would have run from danger or called for help. You ran toward it. You put yourself between me and death without thinking about the cost." Over the next few days, the queen visited Jinho every morning and evening. She seemed genuinely curious about human culture and thinking. Jinho found himself looking forward to these conversations. The queen was intelligent and had a good sense of humor, though her jokes were often about things that would terrify most humans. "Tell me about Earth," she said during one visit. "What makes humans different from other species?" Jinho thought carefully. "We're not the strongest or the smartest, but we adapt quickly, and we don't give up easily. We also help each other, even strangers." "Yes, I have noticed this," the queen said. "Your species is young in galactic terms, but you have already impressed many older civilizations." On his 5th day in the medical bay, Queen Veritai arrived with several of her advisors. Jinho recognized General Kexander, a massive Noxari with scars covering his neck and arms. The others were introduced as High Priest Mordain and Trade Minister Veleron. "Park Jinho," the queen began formally, "I wish to offer you a position in my government." Jinho was so surprised he nearly fell out of bed. "Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I'm just a security guard." "You are more than that," she replied. "I need advisors who think differently than my current council. Someone who sees problems from a new angle." General Kexander stepped forward. His voice was deep and rough. "Your Majesty, with respect, this human has no experience in governing. He knows nothing of our ways." "That is exactly why I want him," Queen Veritai said calmly. "Our ways are not solving our current problems." High Priest Mordain spoke next. His voice was thin and disapproving. "The gods favor those who follow tradition. Bringing an outsider into the inner council is dangerous." Trade Minister Veleron seemed more interested. "What could a human offer that we cannot provide ourselves?" The queen turned back to Jin. "I am offering you the position of Royal Vizier. You would advise me on matters of state and help solve problems facing our empire." Jinho's mind raced. This was completely unexpected. "Your Majesty, I need time to think about this, of course. But know that this offer comes from gratitude and respect, not just obligation." After the queen and her advisors left, Jinho stared at the ceiling for hours. A royal vizier was essentially the second most powerful person in the Noxari Empire. It was an incredible honor, but also incredibly dangerous. The next day, Lieutenant Kim Sora from the embassy security team came to visit. She was Jinho's partner and had worked with him for 3 years. Her expression was worried. "Jinho, I heard rumors about what the queen offered you," she said quietly. "You can't be seriously considering it." "Why not?" he asked. "Because alien politics will get you killed," Sora replied bluntly. "You don't understand their culture, or their enemies. One wrong move and you'll end up dead." Ambassador Li Dongwu visited that afternoon. The older diplomat looked tired and stressed. Ginho, I've received official word about the Queen's offer, he said. The Earth government is concerned about the precedent this would set. What do you mean? If you accept, you become the first human to hold a major position in an alien government. Everything you do will reflect on our entire species. Jin had not thought about the bigger picture. His decision would affect more than just himself. What do you think I should do? He asked. Ambassador Li was quiet for a long moment. That depends on why you want to do it. If it's for glory or power, don't. If it's because you think you can help both our species understand each other better, then maybe it's worth a risk. That evening Queen Veritai came alone. She seemed less formal than usual. You have been thinking hard about my offer, she observed. Double quotes, yes. Can I ask you something honestly? Always, why me? You could choose anyone. Why a human you barely know? The Queen was quiet for a while. Because when death came for me, you did not hesitate. You did not calculate the odds or consider the cost. You simply acted to protect someone who needed help. That kind of instinct cannot be taught. She stood to leave, then turned back. I also believe your species has something to teach us. You are young and flexible where we are old and set in our ways. Our empire faces challenges that require new thinking. After she left, Jinho made his decision. The next morning when Queen Veritai arrived for her daily visit, he was sitting up in bed waiting for her. Your Majesty, I accept your offer. The Queen's scales shifted to brighter colors, showing her pleasure. Good, but I warn you, many of my people will not welcome a human advisor. You will face opposition and danger. I understand, Jinho said. When do I start? As soon as you can travel. We leave for the Noxari homeworld in 1 week. As Ginho watched the Queen leave, he wondered what he had gotten himself into, but deep down he felt excited about the challenge ahead. This was a chance to build bridges between species and maybe make a real difference in the galaxy. Lieutenant Soro would think he was crazy. Ambassador Li would worry about the political implications, but Jinho believed some opportunities were worth it. Risk. He was about to become the first human royal vizier in galactic history. The journey to Noxa Prime took 5 days through hyperspace. Ginho spent most of the time learning about Noxari history and culture from the Queen's personal tutor, an elderly Noxari named Scholar Texani. The old alien was patient with Jinho's questions and seemed genuinely pleased to have such an eager student. The Noxari have ruled our empire for 3,000 years, Texani explained as they sat in the ship's library. We value honor, strength, and tradition above all else. But tradition can also be a chain that holds us back. Jinho studied maps of the empire and reports on current problems. The Noxari controlled 47 star systems, but several border regions were becoming unstable. Pirates attacked merchant ships, and some colony worlds complained about unfair treatment. When they finally arrived at Noxa Prime, Jinho pressed his face against the viewing port in amazement. The planet was covered with cities of crystal and metal that seemed to grow from the ground like giant flowers. Floating platforms moved between towering spires, and ships came and went from ports high in the sky. Beautiful, isn't it? Queen Veritai said, joining him at the window. My ancestors built this over many centuries. The royal palace sat on a mountain peak in the center of the largest city. As their shuttle approached the landing pad, Jinho could see crowds of Noxari gathered below to watch their queen return. Many pointed at the shuttle, clearly curious about the human passenger. Remember, the queen said as they prepared to land, you are the first of your species to set foot on our world. Some of my people will welcome you, others will not. Stay calm and show them the strength I have seen in you. The palace was even more impressive from the inside. Halls stretched for hundreds of meters, decorated with art from across the empire. Gardens filled with strange plants grew in chambers with artificial suns. Jinho felt very small and very far from home. Queen Veritai led him to the throne room where her council was waiting. General Kexander stood at attention in his military uniform. High Priest Mordain wore elaborate robes covered with religious symbols. Trade Minister Velarone had brought several assistants carrying data tablets. Council members, the Queen announced, I present Royal Vizier Park Jinho of Earth. The silence that followed was uncomfortable. General Kexander's scarred face showed clear disapproval. High Priest Mordain looked like he had tasted something bitter. Only Trade Minister Velarone seemed interested rather than hostile. Your Majesty, General Kexander said carefully, perhaps we should discuss this appointment privately first. The appointment is made, the Queen replied firmly. Jinho has proven his loyalty and courage. Now he will prove his wisdom. High Priest Mordain stepped forward. Great Queen, the gods have blessed our people for thousands of years. Why do we need guidance from an alien? Before the Queen could answer, Trade Minister Velarone interrupted. Because we face problems our traditional methods cannot solve. Perhaps fresh eyes will see solutions we have missed. Jinho remained quiet during this exchange. He could feel the tension in the room and knew that saying the wrong thing could make his position impossible. There is a situation that requires immediate attention, Queen Veritai announced. The Dektar Confederation has claimed mining rights to the Zarian asteroid belt. They say we have no legal claim to that region. General Kexander's scales darkened with anger. The Dektar are testing our strength. We should send the fleet and destroy their mining stations. That would mean war. Trade Minister Veleran pointed out, the asteroid belt produces rare metals, worth billions of credits. A war would cost even more. High Priest Mordain nodded. The general speaks wisdom. Our ancestors would have fought for what belongs to us. Ginho had been studying the reports about this situation during the journey. He raised his hand hesitantly. Your Majesty, may I speak, of course. Vizier, that is why you are here. Jinho took a deep breath. I've read the legal documents about the Zarian belt. Both sides have legitimate claims based on different treaties. Fighting won't solve the legal problem. General Kexander snorted. Then what do you suggest? Human, what if we don't fight over the belt? What if we share it? The room fell silent again. High Priest Mordain looked shocked. Share our rightful territory with those barbarians, Jinho continued quickly. The belt is huge. There are thousands of asteroids. Set up joint mining operations. The Noxari provide security and administration. The Nacta provide workers and processing ships. Split the profits based on contribution. Trade Minister Veleran's eyes lit up with interest. That could actually work. The Decta need the metals but lack the technology for deep space mining. It shows weakness. General Kexander protested. No, Queen Veritai said thoughtfully. It shows intelligence. We get the resources without the cost of war. The Decta get what they need without fighting us. Everyone wins. But tradition demands we fight for our territory. High Priest Mordain insisted. Jinho looked at the priest respectfully. Your Majesty, in human history, our greatest leaders were those who found ways to avoid unnecessary wars while still protecting their people. True strength sometimes means choosing not to fight. Queen Veritai stood from her throne. We will try the humans' suggestion. Trade Minister Veleran prepare a proposal for joint operations. General Kexander reduce our fleet presence in the area to show good faith. High Priest Mordain consult the historical records for precedents of resource sharing. As the council members left to carry out their orders, Trade Minister Veleran approached Jin. That was cleverly done. Young human, you offered a solution that gives everyone something they want. Will it work? Jinho asked. We shall see, but it's better than the alternative. Over the following weeks, Jinho worked closely with the Trade Minister to develop the proposal. They identified which asteroids had the most valuable deposits and calculated fair profit-sharing formulas. The plan was complex but reasonable. When Queen Veritai presented the proposal to the Vectar leadership, they were initially suspicious, but the economics made sense, and they agreed to a trial period. The first joint mining operation began a month later. Noxari ships provided security and transport while Vectar workers handled the dangerous extraction work. Both sides were careful to honor the agreement. Knowing that the experiment was being watched by other species, the operation was more successful than anyone had hoped. The profits exceeded projections, and both sides began talking about expanding the partnership to other regions. General Kexander remained skeptical but admitted the results were impressive. You avoided a war and increased our income, he told Jinho. Perhaps there is wisdom in your strange human ways. High Priest Mordain was less convinced. One success does not prove the gods favor this path, he warned. Tradition exists for good reasons, but Queen Veritai was pleased. You have shown my council that there are alternatives to old ways of thinking, she told Jinho privately. This is exactly why I chose you. Jinho was beginning to understand his role. He was not meant to replace Noxari traditions but to offer different perspectives when traditional approaches were not working. It was a delicate balance, but he was learning to navigate the complex currents of alien politics. As word of the successful negotiations spread through the empire, other species began to take notice of the human advisor to the Noxari queen. Some were curious, others worried about what this might mean for the balance of power in the galaxy. Jinho knew this was just the beginning. The real challenges lay ahead. 3 months after the successful mining agreement, Jinho had settled into his role as royal vizier. He worked from an office in the palace's administrative wing, reviewing reports and preparing advice for Queen Ver. The other council members had begun to accept him, though High Priest Mordain remained distant and disapproving. Jinho had also established regular communication with Earth. Ambassador Li Dongwu sent updates on human colonies and trade opportunities. Dr. Hon Mayong, a xenobiologist, had arrived to study Noxari plant life and stayed to help Jinho understand alien psychology. Captain Sho Taemin came as a military observer and proved valuable in understanding Noxari battle tactics. The mining operation profits increased again this month. Trade Minister Veleran reported during a council meeting. The Dectar are asking about expanding to 3 more asteroid belts. Queen Veritai looked pleased. Excellent. What about the border patrol reports? General Kexander consulted his notes. Pirate activity has decreased significantly. The joint patrols with Vector ships are working well. Jinho had suggested combining security forces from both species. The pirates found it much harder to operate when they faced twice as many patrol ships using coordinated tactics. And the religious festivals? The Queen asked. High Priest Mordain spoke reluctantly. The people attend, but many ask questions about our new policies. Some wonder if we are abandoning our heritage. Jinho had learned to be careful when the priest was in this mood. Mordain had been growing more critical of the changes in recent weeks. After the meeting, Jinho returned to his office to review security recordings from the original assassination attempt. Something had been bothering him about that attack, and he finally had time to investigate properly. He played the recordings from multiple angles, studying every detail. The attackers had known exactly where to hide and when to strike. They had sophisticated weapons and excellent timing. This was not a random terrorist attack. Dr. Han Myung knocked on his door and entered carrying a cup of Noksari tea. "You look troubled," she said in Korean. "Something's not right about the assassination attempt," Jinho replied, also switching to their native language. "Look at this." He showed her the recordings. The attackers knew the exact schedule. They knew where the queen would sit and when the speeches would end. This was planned by someone with inside information. Dr. Han Myung studied the images carefully. Her training in analyzing alien behavior patterns made her good at spotting details others missed. "Look at the timing of the attacks," she said. They waited until the Trade Federation president finished speaking. Most people would have attacked during his speech when attention was focused on him, but someone who knew the schedule would know that Queen Veritai always responds to the opening speech, Jinho realized. They waited until she would be standing up to speak. This meant the attack was planned by someone familiar with royal protocol. Jinho felt a chill as he realized what this meant. The conspiracy came from inside the palace, he said quietly. Over the next few days, Jinho carefully reviewed personnel records and security reports. He was looking for patterns and connections that might reveal the traitor. Captain Cho Taemin helped him analyze the data using human intelligence techniques. Whoever did this had access to the Queen's schedule weeks in advance, Captain Cho observed. That limits the suspects to maybe 20 people. Jinho cross-referenced the suspect list with financial records, looking for anyone who might have been paid by the Children of the Void. Most of the palace staff had normal expense patterns, but one name stood out. High Priest Mordain had made several large payments to religious organizations in the past 6 months. The amounts were not unusual for someone in his position, but the timing was suspicious. The payments began shortly after Queen Veritai announced her intention to hire alien advisors. "We need more evidence before we can accuse a council member," Dr. Han Myung warned. "If we're wrong, it could destroy your position here." Jinho knew she was right, but he also knew they were running out of time. The priest's hostility had been growing, and Jinho suspected another attack was being planned. The opportunity to gather evidence came during the Festival of Ancestors, a major religious celebration. High Priest Mordain would be busy with ceremonies for 3 days, giving Jinho access to areas of the temple that were normally restricted. Captain Cho created a distraction by asking for a tour of the palace's military facilities. While General Kexonda was occupied showing off the defensive systems, Jinho slipped into the temple archives. The ancient records were stored in crystal matrices that required special equipment to read. Jinho had learned to use the devices during his cultural training. He searched through recent communications and financial records connected to the priest's office. What he found was worse than he had expected. High Priest Mordain had been in contact with the Children of the Void for over a year. The messages were coded in religious language, but their meaning was clear. The priest believed that Queen Veritai's progressive policies would destroy Noksari culture. The most recent messages were terrifying. Another assassination attempt was planned for the next major public appearance. This time they would target both the queen and her human advisor. Jinho copied the evidence and hurried back to his office. He needed to warn Queen Veritai immediately, but he also knew that accusing High Priest Mordain without absolute proof could cause a civil war. That evening, Jinho requested a private meeting with the queen. They met in her study, a comfortable room filled with books and art from across the empire. "Your Majesty, I have discovered something troubling." Jinho began carefully. He presented the evidence step by step, explaining how he had traced the conspiracy back to the palace. Queen Veritai listened in silence, her scales slowly darkening as she understood the implications. "Mordain has served my family for 30 years, she said quietly. "Are you certain of this?" "The evidence is clear, Your Majesty. But I think we can use his betrayal to stop the Children of the Void permanently." Jinho outlined his plan. Instead of arresting the priest immediately, they would let him think his plot was succeeding. At the next public ceremony, they would be ready for the attack and capture the entire terrorist network. "It's dangerous," Queen Veritai said. "If something goes wrong, we could both die. If we do nothing, they'll just try again later," Jinho replied. "At least this way, we can end the threat." The queen was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the city lights below. Finally, she turned back to Jinho. "Very well, but we will need help from people we can absolutely trust." They spent the next hour planning their counter-operation. General Kexonda would be brought into the plan at the last moment. His loyalty to the queen was beyond question, and they would need military support. Dr. Han Myung and Captain Cho would monitor communications to track any changes in the terrorist plans. Trade Minister Veleron would be kept unaware to maintain normal appearances. The ceremony was scheduled for the following week. Jinho spent the time making final preparations. and trying not to show his nervousness. High Priest Mordain seemed unusually pleased about something, which confirmed that the attack was still planned, 3 days before the ceremony. Jinho received an encrypted message from Earth. Lieutenant Kim Sora was coming to Noxer Prime with a security team. She had heard rumors about increased terrorist activity and wanted to help protect her former partner. "You always did have bad timing," Jinho told her when she arrived. "And you always found the most dangerous assignments," she replied with a grin. "What's the situation?" Jinho briefed her on the conspiracy and the planned counter-operation. Sora whistled softly when she heard the details. "You realize this could go very badly," she said. "That's why I need friends I can trust watching my back." The day of the ceremony arrived clear and bright. The Grand Temple was filled with thousands of Noxari citizens celebrating their ancient traditions. Queen Veritai wore her most formal robes and crown, looking every inch the powerful ruler she was. Jinho stood beside the throne, scanning the crowd for signs of trouble. General Kexanda had positioned loyal guards at strategic points throughout the temple. Captain Cho and Lieutenant Sora monitored the communications frequencies used by the terrorists. High Priest Mordain began the traditional prayers, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Jinho watched him carefully, looking for any signal that would indicate when the attack would begin. Halfway through the ceremony, Dr. Han Myong's voice came through Jinho's hidden earpiece. Movement in the upper galleries. 3 individuals taking positions. Jinho keyed his communicator twice to acknowledge the trap was about to be sprung. The confrontation in the temple had ended with High Priest Mordain's confession and arrest. The remaining members of the Children of the Void were captured, and their terrorist network was destroyed. But the victory came at a cost. Many citizens were shocked to learn that one of their most respected religious leaders had betrayed the crown. Queen Veritai addressed the Empire through holographic broadcasts, explaining the conspiracy and praising the humans who had helped uncover it. Jinho found himself famous throughout Noxari space, though he was not entirely comfortable with the attention. "The people need heroes," the Queen told him as they watched the news reports. "You and your friends have given them hope that we can overcome our internal divisions." General Kexanda had been particularly impressed by the human team's performance. "Your species has excellent tactical minds," he admitted to Jinho. "Perhaps we should consider closer military cooperation." 3 weeks after the temple incident, that cooperation became urgently necessary. Trade Minister Veleron burst into the council chamber with disturbing news. "Your Majesty, we've received reports from our border systems. The Vector Confederation is under attack." The main viewing screen showed images of burning space stations and destroyed ships. The attackers were using advanced weapons and coordinated tactics that suggested a large military force. "Who is attacking them?" Queen Veritai asked. "A coalition, calling itself the Purifier Alliance," Veleron replied. "They claim that cooperation between species is corrupting the galaxy. They want to eliminate all mixed governments and return to species isolation." Jinho felt his stomach tighten. The Purifier Alliance was exactly what he had feared might happen. The success of human-alien cooperation had threatened those who believed in racial purity and isolation. Captain Cho Taemin, who had remained on Noxer Prime as a permanent military liaison, studied the tactical reports. "This is a well-organized invasion force. They have at least 50 capital ships and hundreds of fighters. The Vector are our allies now," General Kexanda said grimly. "If we abandon them, no other species will trust us." Queen Veritai stood from her throne. "Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment. We will honor our agreements." "Your Majesty," Jinho said carefully, "I request permission to contact Earth. Humanity should know about this threat." "Granted, but be quick about it." Jinho sent an urgent message to Ambassador Lee Dongwu explaining the situation. The response came back within hours. Admiral Yoon Jae-ho was already preparing the Earth Defense Fleet for deployment. "Humanity will stand with its allies," the Admiral's message stated. "We're dispatching 30 ships to rendezvous with your forces." The combined human Noxari fleet assembled at the edge of the Zarian asteroid belt. Jinho joined the mission, aboard Queen Veritai's flagship, serving as the liaison between the two species' forces. The human ships were smaller than the Noxari vessels but much faster and more maneuverable. Admiral Yoon had developed tactics that used this advantage, with human fighters providing cover for the larger Noxari battleships. "Your people learn quickly," General Kexander observed as they watched the joint training exercises. "In space combat, speed and adaptability often matter more than raw firepower." The first battle took place near the Vector homeworld. The Purifier Alliance had established a blockade, preventing supply ships from reaching the planet's surface. The combined fleet's mission was to break through and evacuate civilian populations. Jinho watched from the command bridge as hundreds of ships engaged in combat across thousands of kilometers. The human fighters darted between the larger vessels like schools of fish, striking at weak points and withdrawing before the enemy could respond. "Human fighters are targeting their command ships," Captain Cho reported from his position at the tactical station. "If we can disrupt their coordination, the whole formation will collapse." Queen Veritai gave the order to focus fire on the command vessels. The Noxari battleships unleashed their main weapons while human fighters provided covering fire. The strategy worked perfectly, and the Purifier Alliance fleet began to retreat, but the victory was short. Intelligence reports revealed that the Purifier Alliance had much larger forces than initially thought. They controlled territory in 12 star systems and were building more ships every day. This is not just a military campaign, Dr. Han Mi observed during a strategy meeting. It's an ideological war. They want to eliminate the idea that different species can work together. Then we must prove them wrong, Queen Veritai replied. Jinho, I want you to coordinate with other species. We need a grand alliance to face this threat. Over the following weeks, Jinho worked with diplomats from across the galaxy. The Hegemony, the Trade Federation, and even some of the neutral worlds agreed to join the fight against the Purifier Alliance. The decisive battle came at the Kepler Nexus, a strategic location that controlled hyperspace routes between major star systems. The Purifier Alliance had assembled their entire fleet there. Determined to crush the Alliance forces once and for all, Jinho volunteered to lead a special mission to disable the enemy's main command ship. The plan was dangerous, requiring a small team to infiltrate the massive vessel and sabotage its control systems. I should go instead, General Kexanda protested. This is a military operation. No, Jinho replied. The humans developed the infiltration plan. We know how to move through their ship designs. Queen Veritai looked worried. Jinho, you've already risked your life for our people many times. Let someone else take this mission. Your Majesty, leadership means taking the dangerous assignments yourself. I can't ask others to do what I won't do. Lieutenant Sora volunteered to join the mission, along with Captain Cho and 2 Noxari Special Forces soldiers. They would use a modified fighter craft to approach the command ship during the main battle. The infiltration went according to plan at first. The team managed to dock with the enemy ship and make their way to the control center. But as they began sabotaging the command systems, they were discovered by security forces. The fighting was intense in the narrow corridors of the ship. Jinho found himself separated from the others, trying to complete the mission while enemy soldiers closed in from all directions. He managed to disable the main navigation system, but an explosion from a plasma grenade threw him against a bulkhead. Jinho felt ribs crack and tasted blood in his mouth. His vision blurred as he struggled to stay conscious. Jinho respond. Sora's voice came through his communicator. Mission accomplished. He managed to say, get out of here. Not without you. Jinho tried to stand but collapsed again. He could hear enemy soldiers approaching his position. With the last of his strength, he activated the emergency beacon that would signal the fleet to begin their final assault. Lieutenant Sora and Captain Cho found him just as the enemy soldiers arrived. The firefight was brief but vicious. Jinho watched through fading vision as his friends fought to protect him. The combined fleet's assault on the command ship began just as the infiltration team reached their escape craft. With their command structure in chaos, the Purifier Alliance fleet began to fall apart. Jinho lost consciousness during the evacuation. He woke up 3 days later in the medical bay of Queen Veritai's flagship. Dr. Han Myung was monitoring his condition while Lieutenant Sora sat beside his bed. How long was I out? He asked weakly. 3 days, Sora replied. The doctors weren't sure you'd make it. Did we win? The Purifier Alliance surrendered yesterday. Their ideology couldn't survive the proof that different species can fight together successfully. Queen Veritai entered the medical bay, her scales showing the bright colors of relief and joy. My friend, you have done more than save my life. You have saved the idea that we can build a better galaxy together. Jinho tried to sit up but felt dizzy. What happens now? Now we heal, the Queen said, both you and the galaxy. The alliance between our species has grown stronger through this trial. As Jinho recovered, he received messages from across the galaxy. Leaders from dozens of species praised the human contribution to the victory. Children on multiple worlds were learning about the human who had helped unite different species against a common threat. But Jinho knew the real victory was not the military defeat of the Purifier Alliance. It was the proof that cooperation between species was not only possible but necessary for galactic peace. The scars from his injuries would never fully heal, but Jinho had gained something more valuable than perfect health. He had helped build bridges between worlds that would last 4 generations. 6 months after the defeat of the Purifier Alliance, Jinho stood on the balcony of his office in the new Interspecies Council building. The structure rose from the center of Noxer Prime's capital city, its design blending architectural elements from 12 different worlds. Ships from across the galaxy came and went from the landing platforms, carrying diplomats and trade representatives to meetings that would have been impossible. Just 2 years ago, his injuries had healed as much as they ever would. Jinho walked with a slight limp now, and his left arm was weaker than before, but the doctors said he was lucky to be alive at all. The scars were a small price to pay for the galaxy's new future. Deep in thought again, Queen Veritai asked, as she joined him on the balcony. Just amazed at how much has changed, Jinho replied. When I first came here, I was just trying to do my job. I never imagined it would lead to all this. The Queen looked out at the bustling city below. That's exactly why it worked. You acted from your heart, not from ambition. The Interspecies Council had been Jinho's idea, but it took months of careful negotiation to make it reality. Each member species maintained their independence while agreeing to work together on issues that affected everyone. Trade disputes could be resolved peacefully. Military threats could be faced by united forces. Cultural exchange programs helped young beings from different worlds understand each other. The morning briefing is ready, Dr. Han Mi-young announced. As she entered the office, she had accepted a permanent position as the Council's xenocultural advisor, helping species understand each other's customs and thinking patterns. Jinho reviewed the reports as they walked to the main conference room. The Decta had rebuilt their damaged worlds and were now major contributors to galactic security. The Trade Federation had opened new shipping routes that benefited everyone. Even some former Purifier Alliance worlds had applied to join the Council. The conference room filled with representatives from 15 different species. Jinho took his seat at the circular table, designed so that no one species appeared more important than others. Queen Veritae sat to his right in her role as the Council's rotating chairperson. First item, General Kexonda announced, reading from his agenda, the request from the Outer Rim colonies for assistance with pirate raiders. Trade Minister Veleron had prepared a response. Our joint patrol fleets have reduced piracy by 60% in the core systems. We can extend those patrols to cover the Outer Rim. Captain Cho Taemin added his analysis. The pirates are using hit-and-run tactics. We need faster response ships and better intelligence networks. The discussion continued for an hour, with each representative offering suggestions based on their species' expertise. Jinho listened carefully, offering ideas when appropriate, but letting others take the lead. His role had evolved from advisor to facilitator, helping different perspectives combine into effective solutions. Next item, General Kexonda continued, the Cultural Exchange Program expansion. Dr. Han Mi-young stood to present her report. We now have student exchange programs between 8 species. The young beings who participate become natural ambassadors for cooperation when they return home. Ambassador Li Dongwu, who had moved his headquarters to Noxer Prime, spoke next. Earth is prepared to host students from any interested species. Our universities are eager to share knowledge. The meeting continued through lunch, covering topics from trade regulations to scientific research cooperation. Jinho was impressed by how smoothly the different species worked together now. There were still disagreements, but they were handled with discussion rather than threats. After the formal session ended, Queen Veritae asked Jinho to walk with her through the palace gardens. These had become their regular private meetings, where they could discuss sensitive matters away from the crowds. I've received an interesting communication from Earth, she said, as they strolled past flowering alien plants. Your government wants to establish a formal embassy here. That makes sense, Jinho replied. The Council headquarters is becoming the diplomatic center of the galaxy. They've also requested that you be appointed as the first Earth ambassador. To the Interspecies Council, Jinho stopped walking. Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I'm still your royal vizier. Queen Veritae smiled, her scales shifting to warm gold colors. Actually, I have a better idea. The Council needs a permanent coordinator, someone who understands all the member species and has proven diplomatic skills. You're suggesting I become the Council's Secretary General. The position would be elected by all member species, but I think you'd have strong support. Jinho considered the offer as they continued walking. It would mean giving up his special relationship with the Noxeri Empire to serve the entire galaxy, but it also represented the natural evolution of everything he had worked toward. I'll need time to think about it, he said finally. That evening, Jinho had dinner with his human colleagues. Lieutenant Sora had been promoted to captain and now commanded the human security forces stationed on Noxer Prime. Captain Cho led the military liaison office, and Dr. Han Mi-young headed the Cultural Research Institute. You're thinking about taking the Secretary General position, aren't you? Sora said as they ate in Jinho's apartment. How did you know? Because I know you, she replied with a grin. You can't resist a challenge that might help people. Dr. Han Mi-young was more cautious. It would be a huge responsibility. Every decision you make would affect billions of beings across multiple star systems. But think of the good we could do, Captain Cho added. The Council is already preventing conflicts and improving trade. With proper leadership, it could become something even greater. Jinho spent the next week meeting with representatives from different species, learning what they expected from the Council's leadership. Most were supportive of his potential candidacy, though a few worried that humans were gaining too much influence in galactic affairs. The decision came to him while he was reviewing reports about the latest scientific collaboration projects. Teams of researchers from different species were working together to solve problems that no single world could handle alone. Medical advances were being shared freely. New technologies were being developed jointly. This was the galaxy he had dreamed of when he first accepted Queen Veritae's offer, a place where different species could learn from each other and work together for everyone's benefit. Jinho called Queen Veritae to accept her suggestion. The election process took 2 months, with each member species casting votes based on their own internal decision-making methods. When the results were announced, Jinho had won with support from 13 of the 15 member species. The inauguration ceremony was held in the Council's main assembly hall. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered to witness the historic moment. Jinho stood before the assembled delegates wearing a formal uniform that combined elements from multiple cultures. Secretary General Park Jinho, Queen Veritai, announced formally, "Do you accept the responsibility of coordinating the Interspecies Council for the benefit of all member worlds?" "I do," Jinho replied, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. Ambassador Li Dongwu beamed with pride from the Earth delegation section. General Kexander and Trade Minister Velaron applauded from their seats. Even some former enemies looked pleased with the choice. In his acceptance speech, Jinho spoke about the journey that had brought him to this moment. He talked about the importance of standing up for others, even when it meant personal risk. He emphasized that the Council's strength came from its diversity, not despite it. 2 years ago, I was a security guard who made a split-second decision to protect someone in danger, he said. Today I stand before you as proof that anyone can make a difference if they're willing to act when action is needed. After the ceremony, Jinho stood once again on the balcony of his new office. The Secretary General's quarters were at the top of the council building, offering a view of the entire capital city. Ships from dozens of worlds moved through the sky, carrying people and cargo between the stars. Queen Veritai joined him, as she had so many times before. "Any regrets?" she asked. Jin-Ho thought about everything that had happened since that day in the space station. The pain, the fear, the difficult decisions, and the moments of triumph. "None," he said finally. "This is exactly where I'm supposed to be." 5 years later, the Interspecies Council had grown to include 23 member species. Trade between worlds had increased dramatically. Military conflicts had become rare, resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. Cultural exchange programs had created a generation of young beings who thought of themselves as galactic citizens first and members of their birth species second. Jinho walked through the council building's halls, greeting staff members from a dozen different worlds. His assistant was a young Vector named Kexori who reminded him of himself at that age, eager to help but sometimes overwhelmed by the scope of their responsibilities. Secretary General Kexori said as they reviewed the day's schedule. "The new human training officer has arrived." Jinho looked up from his reports with interest. Earth had been sending more diplomatic personnel as humanity's role in galactic affairs continued to grow. "Send her in." The door opened and a young woman in a crisp military uniform entered. She saluted smartly before introducing herself. "Ensign Park Subin reporting for duty." "Sir." Jinho studied her face and saw something familiar in her determined expression. "Park Subin, are we related?" "You're my uncle, sir. My father always said I reminded him of you when you were young." Jinho smiled, remembering his brother's letters about his ambitious daughter who wanted to follow in her uncle's footsteps. "Welcome to the council, Ensign Park. I think you're going to fit in perfectly." As he showed his niece around the building, Jinho reflected on how far they had all come. The galaxy was not perfect. There were still conflicts and misunderstandings between species. But it was better than it had been, and it continued to improve each year. The young woman beside him represented the future, a generation that would take cooperation between species for granted and build something even greater than what his generation had achieved. Standing in front of bullets with a shield had been the right thing to do in that moment. But the real victory had come in all the moments afterward, when beings from different worlds chose to trust each other and work together. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but Jinho no longer faced them alone. He had friends and allies among the stars, and together they could build a future worthy of all their dreams.